explore his contributions to education and how his legacy continues to shape the future of learning in Namibia. Prof. Tjivikua, very good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time to join us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Papa. Pleasure to be here.
Much obliged.
While grieving, obviously, condolences to the nation and to His Excellency's family and friends.
In as much as we are a nation that's mourning, we're at the same time also celebrating his illustrious life, his impact that he has had not only in Namibia, but the continent and the world at large. How would you remember him personally? And maybe if you can just share your first personal encounter with this towering figure that you've probably just heard about, and then you finally got to meet him. Talk to us about that first encounter and what the circumstances were and how you felt at that moment.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the 60s. Obviously, then it was the beginning of the struggle, armed struggle for Namibia. And my own family, my father and mother were personal friends of the late president and the Madame Kobambo, Nujoma. My mother and she were classmates and schoolmates, and they played together. So there's a lot of history, family history in the background. Yeah. I met, obviously, we were listening to radio Namibia from Lusaka.
Yeah, Zambia.
Zambia. Every opportunity we could get on shortwave stations and so on. Yeah. And obviously, so all these figures that we finally got to meet while we were outside of Namibia and in Namibia were towering figures of history in Namibia, because their names were all over. They were promoting Namibia's independence and so on. I met His Excellency first in 1983 in New York. There was a UN session in the United Nations, and he was attending the meetings there, and that's when I met him for the first time. I was privileged to join the meeting in the UN Security Council as an observer, obviously, and had an opportunity to interact with him when he addressed Namibian students in the US. So that goes back 40 some years now. And then I was privileged to host him when I became professor in the United States at Lincoln University in 1990. Actually. So that was very early days. In September, we hosted him and honored him with an honorary degree. And then he extended an invitation for me to visit him when I returned home.
Yes.
And I only returned home for the first time after a long period in 1992, when he hosted me and my family at State House. So the next interaction or engagement was when I was appointed as Rector of the Polytechnic in 1995. And then when I came back, there were regular interactions. Yeah. To put his contribution in perspective, I think we should go back to where we all started as a nation, that he was the founding president. So he actually crafted the apex structures of governance in Namibia: the presidency and the cabinet, the National Council, National Assembly first, and the National Council, and of course the judiciary. He was also in his office is also the National Planning Commission, which created the National Development Plans according to which we plan and grow. And through the National Planning Commission, he also articulated Vision 2030, which is about accelerating growth, national growth, to become a developed nation. Now that's at the global level, nationally, and then for education specifically, he had a soft heart.
Yeah.
And he was an advocate for education, education, and education,
Yeah.
training, skills, and all that. We should remember that he commissioned the first presidential commission on higher education in Namibia in 1991,
Yeah.
which recommended the creation of the University of Namibia and the Polytechnic of Namibia. So the UNAM was established in 1992 by Act of Parliament, and then Polytechnic was established by Act of Parliament in 1994. So he was the one who signed the government gazettes. He was the presiding officer over all these developments, obviously. And then further on in 1998, he commissioned another study on education cultural training that looked into further development and redefinition of education as a whole. In that recommendation, we made the proposal that Polytechnic should become a technological university. And that was one of the recommendations that stood out.
Yeah.
And based on that, we continue to grow to one day become the preferred university in Namibia. Or, in fact, in Africa, we were ranked quite highly. By the time I left, we were under the top 20 in Africa.
Wow.
So it was quite an achievement, but that's because the support we got was immense. So during good times and bad times, he was always on your side because he always wanted to see performance, growth, development, and he wanted everyone to move on rather than being stuck in the past. Yeah. And we saw that as an opportunity for us to be creative, to create partnerships globally.
So he gave you carte blanche to say, look,
exactly.
we're giving you this mammoth assignment, see what you can do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is he did not interfere. He never got a call from him to say, what are you doing with this, and so on. And there were cool moments and moments of a lot of noise, as you would remember, in the 90s. When students didn't like the ban on alcohol, for instance, and then they were making all the noise and they ran to State House, and he was calm about it and said, this is for your own good. And staff members also had issues with the change of culture from laissez-faire business dealings to professional business culture. He had all that, and he was always in our corner.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that, he had a soft heart and a great passion for education. And of course, in 2009, we saw him going, back to school, to the University of Namibia to pursue his degree in geology. But many people don't understand. I think many people don't understand that, the education system was also a tool of oppression. It was used by the then South African apartheid regime. The black people in this country, the African people in this country would receive an inferior form of education in the form of the Bantustan, education system, as opposed to their fellow white brothers and sisters at that time. Talk to us a bit about that transition from coming from a system that psychologically wired us to think that since I'm of a darker complexion, I can't be a doctor, I can't be an engineer. What had to take place in terms of shifting the mindset of saying, look, this is what we are going to embark upon if we have to develop this country in this phase of economic emancipation. Talk to us about that shift in mindset of where we're coming from, an oppressive regime where we had to. Education also is a tool to install a sense of self-confidence and belief. Talk to us about that journey in terms of when you were leading the Polytechnic of Namibia, looking at the programs that would be prioritized and fit in the vision that we wanted for our country.
Obviously, the laws had to be amended from the old system to the new system. And in 2001, the Basic Education Act was passed, was promulgated. So that was a break from the past. New rules came into place, and you don't spank a child in class anymore, like unlike the olden days when we used to get a bit of hiding for misbehaving. But what was important is the space that was created for the leadership in institutions, in schools, the instruments of education, schools, colleges, universities, and so on. That the leadership could take on and take up what they saw fit within their mandate of a particular sector or subsector to make things happen. Our enrollment, our literacy rate, as you know, went up quite significantly. Enrollment in schools jumped significantly. You remember that in, I think, 2010 or so, basic education became free, a free commodity to the learners, and so on. So a lot of good things happened in that period. We saw that opportunity as the moment to branch into fields that didn't exist in Namibia, that we foresaw to become important in the future. Talk about when we started at the Polytechnic, we had something like 2,300 students and no degree programs, only diploma programs, which means 3-year programs coming from the technical component. So we had to introduce degree programs or upgrade the current diploma programs to degree programs. And further on, we had to invent or create new qualifications, say in computer science, where we now started to branch out into software engineering, hardware engineering, and then business computing. Engineering did not exist in Namibia. Engineering education did not exist in Namibia. We took that on in 1997, first with a diploma, and then with a BTech, 4-year BTech, and eventually with a Bachelor of Science degree. Now, today you can study for a PhD in computer science, engineering, health sciences, biomedical technology, and so on. So for us, for me as a scientist, and for his love for science and technology, that was a good match. Yeah. That he saw the developments in science and technology being very important. And in private conversations, and of course in his graduation speeches, he would speak about science and technology as a strategic cornerstone for development in Namibia. So I was very, very happy that we could grow to that extent without interference, at least not from his office. His office was an enabler because he was a good listener and he was a good supporter. If he was in your corner because you're doing well, you didn't have to worry about the noise in the background. So that was a father figure who saw that good things must happen and they should not be disturbed. They should continue. We should continue to build on.
And I read recently somewhere that, visionary men and women, it somehow feel burdened by the fact that they can see so far where others still can't, and the frustration in articulating that vision that they want for a certain organization or a country, it becomes very cumbersome. And it reminded me of a quote that says, a midget is only able to see far because they stand on the shoulders of giants. You had that up. You were that proverbial midget because you stood on the shoulders of a giant. At what point did you realize, did it hit you? It's like, wow, this man's plan for this country, it has to take a certain shift in the way we do things. You spoke about the fact that it can't just be business as usual. We have to get serious with business if you want to go get where we want to get. But what was that moment for you where you realized, wow, this man really has a strong vision, and how did you buy into it and to ensure that you were going to take on the serious task that you were assigned?
Well, even before independence, even in 1983, he was talking about education, science, and technology. So that was very inspiring. In my 30-minute interview for the post of Rector of Polytechnic, I proposed that this institution should become a university of science and technology. Those were very early days when technicons were all
common,
about common and all about this technical, technological education and so on. But we had to bring this to the next level so that those institutions also are not seen as inferior because they are technical in nature, but they're also seen as technological, and they're equal to the others except for the mandates. So his inspiration came very early on in conversations and at State House, where he would call you for an afternoon and you have a conversation about development. He had a big mural on the Congo River, and for him it would be a scientific marvel to bring this water to a dry country like Namibia. That's how big his vision was, to connect the continent. It is no surprise that he enjoyed the admiration of so many, and he always had a soft ear for me. At his home, at State House, at events, because he was very humble and he always listened. He always give you time to express yourself. And that really shows humility. It also shows the greatness of his personality. That is inclusive, he's listening, and he's looking for an opportunity for you to grow. I saw that very early on, and I took it on as it came.
Yeah. So in the actual fact, the fact that, you loved education so much is still, and maintained a very, open mind in understanding, or at least trying to understand, innovations and, new ideas, and realizing that, this responsibility has to be given to a younger generation to be carried forward. But to end our discussion, we had an earlier discussion with some of the guests, and one of the things that I said was, Dr. Nujoma is one of those people you consider the last of a dying breed. Is one of the last person of that exclusive club. Is this photograph I saw, and it's still it went viral now, where he's the same picture with Samora Machel and Robert Mugabe, the teacher himself, from Tanzania, Julius Nyerere, and it just made me wonder, what does it take to be a leader of that quality? Is it history that just throws it on you, or do you wake up one day and say, no, I'm tired of the status quo? In your view, I know it's a very philosophical question, but in your view, what elements need to come together to be a Sam Nujoma or Agustino Neto or Julius Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, you're actually coming to the question, to the important question that's always posed to leadership. Is leadership made or born into you? And there are a combination of factors. Some people are just charismatic. They're strategic, they're visionary, they're charismatic, they're humble, and therefore people have no qualms about being glued to them. They follow them because they see a vision. They follow them because they see a human being, a caring human being carrying them. So in all these leaders, you see characteristics that are common: the humility, the charisma, the resoluteness, the capacity to think beyond today, to create a vision for Namibia and for whichever country. It takes doing, some doing at home, it takes some doing at school, and it's some doing in social systems where we grow up to become more human than we were when we were isolated. Leaders like them didn't have the opportunities that we had, but they saw a future for all of us. Yes, some of them had gone to school further than others, but the common denominator was that they were dedicated to liberate their countries. And amongst themselves, they found commonalities, and they found brotherhood. They found strength in each other. And that's what brought us to independence here in Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and so on. Those are towering figures in history, in our history of Southern Africa. The pattern has been passed on to us, the younger generation, and we must pass on to the even younger generation, that we must build institutions. I think their legacy should be in what is left behind and what we are building on, that we are about mediocrity being, done away with, about complacency being done away with, that we become a meritocratic system or country where merit counts, where competence counts. And if we could lift up the systems to that level, the public systems, for instance, the public institutions, government and so on, to that level, that is honoring their legacy. Because if they had wanted, and they wanted a good life for all, peace and harmony and so on, we got to think about how to create these systems that speak to inclusiveness, because inclusiveness brings us peace and stability. Competence brings us to the next level of development. I think that's what he would like have seen had he been around to see that Namibia is going on 5, 10, 15 years from now. And that's why Vision 2030 was crafted. And now, of course, we have to look at a new vision statement or new vision document taking us to the future. Because there's got to be a road plan going to the future.
Yeah. Prof. Tjivikua, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights and sharing some very personal stories as well in terms of, relationship with the founding father. Really, really highly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
That was the former